Exclusive contract with Feilu Novel Network Novel. 3 Kingdoms. At the beginning, it instigates Cao Cao to plunder the palace. Su Ran traveled through the 3 kingdoms and was occasionally saved by Old Tai Gong Cao. At this time, Yuan Shao was proud of secretly promoting the rebellion of the 10 Constant Attendants. As a result, Su Ran instigated Cao Cao to rob the palace under the guise of saving the emperor, and even framed it for Er Yuan.Late at night, Empress He tossed and turned, feeling ashamed and angry. Yuan Benchu, you are shameless. Even stealing the jade eggplant from this palace. Wang Situ skillfully used a series of tricks, but after losing his daughter and giving her a knife, he dared not speak up. Guan Huyuan turned his head and was beheaded by Hua Xiong, holding back his internal injuries. Zhuge village master was captured 7 times and was driven back to the thatched cottage by Liu Da'er.Zhuge Liang, Zhou Yu, and others. Su Ziyu, please be a person. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1, I have a plan to solve the difficulties of the Cao family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1, I have a plan to solve the difficulties of the Cao family. In the 6th year of Zhongping, 189 AD, Emperor Ling of Han passed away and Liu Bian ascended to the throne. Empress Dowager He listened to the court and General He Jin assisted in politics. The conflict between He Jin and the 10 Constant Attendants intensified, and he wanted to execute the eunuchs, but Empress Dowager He disagreed. To eliminate the 10 attendants, Yuan Shao, who was then the colonel of the Central Army, gave He an idea for entering and exiting. Under the pretext of clearing the emperor's side and punishing eunuchs, the border army was mobilized to the capital, forcing the Empress Dowager to make a decision. In order to appease public anger, Empress Dowager He would surely execute the 10 constant attendants. He Jin was overjoyed and adopted the suggestion. Luoyang City, a mansion with a backyard. A young man is playing chess with an old man. Wrong, you're a broken horse leg. Oh, yes, I made a mistake. This chess game is really interesting. The boy's name is Su Ran, and he traveled to the 3 Kingdoms world half a month ago. Su Ran was rescued by the old man while in a coma. After this period of rest, his body has basically recovered. Uncle, I've been bothering you at your residence for so long, and I should go too. After playing a game of chess, Su Ran smiled and said. To be honest, after spending this time together, he really feels a bit reluctant. The old man treats him like a nephew. Moreover, with the old man, he doesn't have to worry about food and clothing, indicating that his family is quite wealthy. But after all, this is the 3 Kingdoms period, and Su Ran couldn't have been living in the old man's house waiting to die. Chaos is coming soon, he needs to find a thigh to hold. Of course, Su Ran also thought that if he couldn't find his thigh, he would make himself a thigh. But with Su Ran's lazy nature, of course it's best to lie flat. If I marry a few more beautiful wives and concubines, then my childhood. TSK. Upon hearing Su Ran's words, the old man was slightly taken aback and couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. Although Su Ran is young, the old man really likes his carefree nature, and the two of them can be considered to have forgotten each other. Especially Su Ran also taught him how to play chess, bringing him a lot of joy. The old man is about to speak up and persuade him to stay. At this moment, a young man in his 20s walked over with a sigh. Behind the young man were 4 or 5 people, each with a worried expression. Seeing the young man's dejected expression, the old man couldn't help but furrow his brow, indicating that the matter had not been resolved. Dad. The young man first bowed respectfully to the old man and then nodded slightly to Su Ran. Su Ran also nodded slightly at him. The young man had an ugly appearance. Su Ran had seen him twice in the mansion and knew he was the old man's son, but he had never had a conversation. Didn't you see it again? The old man put down his chess pieces and frowned, asking. The youth did not speak, which can be considered as default. The old man sighed and said, "It's my fault for this. If it weren't for my premature resignation, as my Grand Commandant, how could anyone dare to bully us like this?" The speaker has no intention, the listener has a heart. Su Ran was taken aback for a moment. How could he proceed? "General He Jin, Empress He's brother. That butcher who went from slaughtering pigs to being a general. He hasn't been killed by Shichang attendant yet." In an instant, a series of question marks flashed through Su Ran's mind. This Nima is in the initial stage of traveling to the Three Kingdoms. The young man thought for a moment and said, "Dad, why don't you go find Captain Yang? You had a good relationship with him when you were an official in the court." The old man shook his head and said, "The world is scorching cold, people walk in the cool tea. Yang Biao, that old guy, is even more shrewd than a fox. He understands the principle of being wise and protecting himself. How could he offend He Jin for my Cao family? I left the court too early, and to be honest, you are still young. If you are dismissed from your official position, those who offended your father when he was an official in his early years will not miss this opportunity and will not let the Cao family down. Alas, the Cao family is going to face great difficulties." "Well, the Cao family. Ah man. Difficult. The ugly young man in front of me is actually the treacherous Cao Cao." Su Ran widened his eyes and said, "This Nima. This big brother. Brother, but Cao Cao." Su Ran couldn't help but blurt out. The ugly young man nodded, not surprised that Su Ran knew his name. In his opinion, it should be his father who told the other party. After all, Su Ran has been playing chess with the old man these days, and the two of them often chat. "Little brother, just call me Mengda." Cao Cao forced out a smile, but it was even uglier than crying. He did not underestimate Su Ran's identity, on the contrary, he treated him with courtesy. Cao Cao is now the colonel of the Imperial Army, one of the 8 colonel of the Western Garden. He has 5,000 soldiers and horses under his command. Although his official position is not high, he holds real power. In the capacity of Cao Cao, Su Ran directly called him by his courtesy name, which also showed his recognition. Father Cao Song has been in great spirits these days, even his appetite has increased. Cao Cao knew that it was Su Ran's credit for playing chess with the old man. So, he has a good impression of Su Ran. "What do you call me, little brother?" "My name is Su Ran." Seeing Cao Cao still looking at him, it seemed like he was waiting for him to continue speaking. Su Ran suddenly remembered that people in the Three Kingdoms all had characters. Between friends, they are all matched by characters. Su Ran, with the courtesy name Ziyuan.Late. This character is purely a temporary creation by Su Ran, taken from the phrase, humble gentleman, gentle as jade. "Oh, it's brother Ziyuan." Cao Cao stood up and arched his hand. During the Three Kingdoms period, people with status attached great importance to etiquette. Su Ran also quickly stood up to salute. From the fragments of words, Su Ran combined historical records and basically inferred. Why did He Jin not see Cao Cao? Cao Cao opposed the idea of inviting foreign troops to force the Empress Dowager to execute the 10 Constant Attendants, which led to his hatred towards He Jin. He Jin sent out a message to dismiss Cao Cao from his position as a military colonel. Cao Cao visited the house several times in a row, but was refused by He Jin. In the capital, the 8th colonel of Huyuan was appointed to lead the troops. Although the position is not high, each colonel has at least 5,000 soldiers and horses under his command, making him a powerful figure holding military power. At this moment, a burly man behind Cao Cao spoke loudly. "Uncle, you don't know. We waited outside the gate of He Mansion for half a day and finally blocked He Jin." But He Jin didn't give Mengda a chance to explain, saying that the Empress Dowager took the initiative to summon him into the palace and discuss the execution of the 10 attendants, and intentionally mocking Mengda. After speaking, he threw his sleeve and left, not even giving Mengda a chance to speak up. TND, do you mean to be angry or not? He comes from a background in slaughtering pigs, what a magical thing. Before the burly man could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Cao Cao. Ziyuan, stop talking nonsense. Su Ran thought to himself that the burly man was Cao Hong, and Cao Ziyuan was Cao Cao's younger brother. Old Cao Song looked apologetically at Su Ran and said with a bitter smile. I originally wanted to stay with you for a few more days, but you also saw that the Cao family was about to face a major crisis, so I won't force you to stay. Mengde, you go to the accounting room to withdraw 100 taels of silver, which can be considered as a gift from the old man to Ziyuan. At this moment, Su Ran was frowning tightly. At this moment, in his heart, there is a battle between heaven and humanity. I can solve the dilemma of the Cao family. Even, I can help the Cao family win in defeat and climb the mountain again. Just. Should we tie it up with the Cao family's worship? Hey, of course, there is another important reason that made Su Ran hesitate. 100 taels of silver. It sounds like a lot, but for Su Ran, it's not enough. In this happy era of men, how many wives and concubines is this little silver enough to support? With a grit of his teeth, Su Ran decided to do something big. Cough, wait a moment, Old Tai Gong. I have a plan to solve the difficulties of the Cao family. Chapter 2. He Jin is determined to die, and even the Buddha cannot keep him. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. He Jin is determined to die, and even the Buddha cannot keep him. Su Ran suddenly spoke up and immediately caught everyone's attention. From the conversation just now between Cao Cao and others, Su Ran can basically confirm that He Jin will die today. For some reason, since traveling to the Three Kingdoms, various books and materials that Su Ran had read in his past life have become incredibly clear in his mind. Especially the books Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Records of the Three Kingdoms seem to be imprinted in one's mind. Just like How to Enter and Die. In the 6th year of Zhongping, 189 AD, on the first day of the 8th month, the 10th attendant, led by Zhang Rang and others, falsely transmitted the Empress Dowager's decree and summoned him into the palace. Upon hearing that Su Ran had a plan, Cao Cao quickly sought advice and said, Ziyuan, please speak up. Cao Song shook his head slightly when he saw his son's temperament. In his view, although Su Ran was intelligent and wise, he was only 17 or 18 years old after all, and he didn't seem to have much knowledge about the politics of the Han Dynasty. He just said he had a plan, just to comfort them. After all, in the current Han Dynasty, He Jin can be said to be below 1 person and above 10,000 people. Offended He Jin, no one can help him intercede for the Cao family. Mengde, today is August 1st. Su Ran needs to confirm again. Cao Cao was slightly stunned and subconsciously said, today is the first day of August. Ziyuan, what does this mean? Su Ran suddenly felt confident in his heart. 10 constant attendants have issued an edict, why are you going to die today? Su Ran's tone was plain, but to Cao Cao and others, it was like a bolt from the blue. According to historical records, after entering the palace today, He Jin was killed by the 10 constant attendants who had already been ambushed. Then, the 10 constant attendants held Empress He and the Emperor Liu Bian hostage in an attempt to protect themselves. He Jin is dying today. This statement shattered the sky. Cao Cao and others widened their eyes and looked shocked. Mengde, immediately gather your troops and horses, hurry into the palace. Su Ran said in a deep voice. Cao Cao looked at Su Ran, his mouth twitching slightly. Ziyuan, you. How could you make such a joke? Before Cao Cao could answer, old Cao Song felt a bit unhappy. After a few days of contact, he knew that Su Ran was a free-spirited and unrestrained person, but at this moment, he was still making such jokes, which made him somewhat lacking in vision. After all, this matter concerns the rise and fall of the Cao family. Cough cough, Ziyuan, you may not be clear yet. The Grand General is the older brother of the current Empress Dowager and the uncle of the Emperor. Moreover, He Jin holds a heavy army and leads the troops and horses of Luoyang, with all 50,000 troops and horses in the Western Garden under his control. Shi Changsha doesn't have the ability to touch him, nor dare he. Cao Cao suppressed the urge to speak profusely and patiently explained. He who enters will die. Su Ran's tone remained calm. But to everyone, there was an inexplicable confidence and domineering aura. Chao Hong, who has always had a hot temper, couldn't help but say, "Then you say, how do you know why Jin is going to die?" Su Ran didn't have time to argue with them. If he went late, he wouldn't be able to make it. I just watched at night. Oh no, I saw it by observing the celestial phenomena during the day. Su Ran said loudly. These days, there is no materialism yet, and everything that cannot be explained is pushed to heaven. They all observe the sky at night. What do you see during the day? Chao Hong became enthusiastic. Su Ran rolled his eyes. According to historical records, Chao Hong was a reckless man with well-developed limbs and a simple mind. As expected, he was. What do you know? Observing celestial phenomena at night is considered a skill. Watching during the day is considered tricky. Chao Hong was immediately choked and unable to speak. He suspected that Su Ran was deceiving him, but observing celestial phenomena was a technical task that he didn't understand and had no way to refute. Seeing that Cao Cao and others all had expressions of, "I believe you a ghost," Su Ran could only sigh. It seems that the ancients were not so easy to fool. Okay, let me ask you, did Meng De see anyone in the palace who came to deliver orders while he was guarding at the entrance of He Mansion today? Su Ran picked up the tea cup and took a gentle sip. Cao Cao subconsciously said, "Nature is the little yellow gate in the palace. There's nothing wrong with this." Su Ran smiled and said, "Let me ask you, in the past, the Empress Dowager used the little yellow gate or palace maids to convey her wishes." Cao Cao frowned slightly. Su Ran continued, "Empress Dowager He, knowing that He Jin has always disliked eunuchs, sent a eunuch to deliver an edict. It's hard to say that she deliberately wanted to disgust her brother. This." Cao Cao pondered silently. He has been serving as a colonel under He Jin for some time, and it is common for Empress Dowager He to summon He into the palace, but it seems that only palace maids come. Chao Hong interjected, "The one who came to convey the Empress Dowager's decree could also be a eunuch, but that doesn't mean much." Several people looked at Su Ran. Indeed, based solely on this, how can we see the intention of the 10 constant attendants to plot against the Grand General? Su Ran had no choice but to continue explaining, "Then let me ask you again, what happened when the Empress Dowager ordered the Grand General to enter the palace?" Chao Hong blurted out and said, "We are discussing the execution of the 10 attendants. He Jin is still mocking Meng De with this. TND He Jin comes from a butcher's background." Speaking of this, Chao Hong became angry. Cao Cao's eyes suddenly lit up, as if he had thought of something. Su Ran snorted coldly. "Will the Empress Dowager send a young eunuch to deliver an edict to execute such a covert matter as the 10 constant attendants? Even if she sent a eunuch to deliver the message, she still told the eunuch the detailed content. Even if we really want to discuss the execution of the 10 attendants, why not wait until we enter the palace and say it face-to-face? Is that okay? Is it necessary for a eunuch to know about such a big matter? Difficult, are you not afraid that he will leak it to the 10 constant attendants?" A series of rhetorical questions have already left Chao Hong confused. Cao Cao's brow furrowed tighter and tighter. The atmosphere on site became solemn, silent, and needles could be heard falling. Everyone is aware of the seriousness of the problem. Su Ran picked up the tea cup, took a gentle sip, and said lightly. "So, the only explanation is that the 10 constant attendants falsely transmitted the Empress Dowager's decree to lure and kill He Jin. He Jin is determined to die, even the Buddha cannot keep him, as I said. Chapter 3. The Great Achievements of Saving the Driving Force. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Great Achievements of Saving the Driving Force. Hush. Cao Cao could no longer sit still, carrying his hands on his back and anxiously pacing back and forth. Cao Hong and others dared not speak, their eyes wandering back and forth with Cao Cao's footsteps. Mr. Chao's hands trembled slightly, and the teacups and lids in his hands made a clattering sound. Su Ran put down the teacup and waited quietly for Cao Cao's decision. He has provided the suggestion to Cao Cao, and the rest depends on the courage of this treacherous man. And this will also determine whether he will continue to stay in the Cao family. Everyone is waiting for Cao Cao to make a decision. Cao Cao frowned tightly, pretending to be calm on the surface, but in reality, his heart was pounding uncontrollably. Gather your troops and horses, and enter the palace immediately. Bringing troops into the palace without permission is a crime of rebellion, and we will execute the 9 clans of Lian. If Su's prediction is wrong, the Cao family will be executed by everyone. Suddenly, Cao Cao's footsteps stopped. Father, can you talk to the eunuchs in the palace now? Cao Cao suddenly remembered the connections left by his grandfather Cao Teng in the palace. Cao Lao Tai Gong suddenly realized that his adoptive father Cao Teng, who had made great contributions, was granted the title of Marquis Fei Ting. He was the only eunuch in nearly 100 years to be granted the title of Marquis. Cao Teng has been in the palace for many years, and many people have received his favor. Nowadays, the 10 constant attendants are at their peak, with the eunuch Zhang Rang as the leader. However, during the reign of Cao Teng, Zhang Rang was just a small yellow gate. Cao Teng once said that he had established connections in the palace, but it was not necessary to use it unless absolutely necessary. Everyone understands that this kind of favor can only be used once, and once used up, it will be gone. Xiao, immediately take this item and go to the palace. Cao Teng took out a jade pendant from his pocket and handed it to Cao Ren. At this moment, Cao Cao cannot leave home, and among the remaining Cao brothers, Cao Ren is the most stable in his life. The time for a stick of incense has passed. Su Ran leisurely drank tea and continued to play chess with Old Tai Gong Cao. But Cao Lao Tai Gong's mind was still on the chessboard. A chessboard was messed up by him, and even a horse could be used as a cannon. Cao Cao was still pacing back and forth, frowning and pondering for some reason. More than 100 private soldiers in the Cao mansion have also been assembled, all dressed in armor and ready to depart. On the other hand, Cao Chun held Cao Cao's waist tag and went to the military camp, waiting for Cao Cao's final order. Only Cao Hong was anxiously scratching his ears and cheeks on the side, waiting anxiously but not daring to ask casually. Another stick of incense has passed. Cao Ren rushed into the mansion in a frenzy. Su Ran was a bit speechless. It's been almost 2 hours now. The communication in this era is really... Message from the palace. He Jin entered the palace alone, the palace is in chaos. Cao Ren ran panting and out of breath. Hush. Cao Cao's eyes flashed with brilliance. Cao Hong, hurry to the military camp, notify Cao Chun to gather all the troops and horses, and immediately follow me into the palace to rescue the general. Cao Cao said in a low voice, his voice tinged with excitement. If we can save anyone this time, the previous grievances will be completely erased, and the Cao family will be unharmed. Delying. Cao Hong was also excited and left with great strides. Just as everyone was excited, Su Ran poured a bucket of cold water on them. It's too late. Su Ran spat out the tea leaves and said lightly. Upon his reminder, Cao Cao suddenly realized that 2 hours had passed, and it would take at least 1 more hour to gather his troops and arrive at the palace. 3 hours. Even He Jin doesn't know how many times he has died. TND. Cao Cao angrily wanted to curse his mother, regretting not having listened to Su Ran earlier. Dong, dong, dong. Su Ran lightly tapped the desktop with his fingertips. Even if there is time, it cannot be saved. He Jin is about to dismiss your official, are you still hesitant to rescue him? So Mengde is this kind of person who repays good for evil, Su Ran said jokingly. Cao Cao even wants to cry. I really don't want to save anyone. I'm trying to save the Cao family. Seeing the great achievements in hand, I was so delayed by myself. Su Ran smiled and said. I just said I led troops into the palace, but I didn't say I was going to save He Jin. Save the butcher. Hee hee. That's the last resort. If only to save a butcher, Mengde would have let down my analysis. Cao Cao looked at Su Ran in confusion. Cao Hong stood frozen in place, unsure whether to continue to the military camp. Mengde, upon careful consideration, is there a better option? Su Ran wanted to test the level of this eternal traitor. Before Cao Cao could answer, Cao Hong burst into a loud voice and said, first, is it difficult to help those 10 constant attendants? Su Ran and Cao Cao rolled their eyes at him. Cao Hong scratched his head and remained silent. Ziyu, drink tea. Cao Cao took the initiative to pour tea for Su Ran, and his intention to seek advice was self-evident. At this moment, he has experienced great joy and sorrow, and his mind has long been confused. He decided to seek advice directly. Su Ran didn't rush to pick up the teacup, but instead inspired, which is bigger, the emperor or the general? Of course he is the emperor. Cao Cao replied casually. Pop. The teacup in Cao Cao's hand fell to the ground and was shattered. Mantis catching cicadas and yellow sparrows behind. Cao Cao patted his forehead, how could he not have thought of it? Shi Changshi assassinated He Jin. Who is He Jin? That's Empress Dowager He's brother, the emperor's uncle. How could Empress Dowager He spare the 10 constant attendants? And since the 10 constant attendants dared to kill He Jin, how could they have thought of this layer? After He Jin's death, the 10 constant attendants will inevitably continue to force the palace and hold Empress He and the emperor hostage. It's even possible to eradicate the root cause. Kill Empress He and Emperor Liu Bian together and establish a new heir. Those filthy eunuchs dare not do anything, and those with incomplete limbs do not care about fame or historical records. Gudong. Cao Cao swallowed his saliva and became excited again. The 10 constant attendants killed the Grand General and held the Empress Dowager and the Emperor hostage. If Cao Mengde could enter the palace to rescue them, they would execute the 10 constant attendants and rescue the Empress Dowager's mother and son. That will be a great help to save the driver, a tremendous achievement. Granting titles and titles is not a big deal. Chapter 4. Su Ziyuan, 400 Years of Protecting the Han Dynasty. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Chapter 4. Su Ziyuan, 400 Years of Protecting the Han Dynasty. Ziyu, Great Talent. Cao Cao excitedly stepped forward and grabbed Su Ran's hands. At this moment, in such a critical situation, Su Ran can still remain calm and think of the last move of the 10 constant attendants. This person's meticulous thinking can be said to be impeccable. Cao Cao thought to himself that if given half a day, he could also figure out the key points. But Su Ran made the best decision in just a blink of an eye. Old Cao felt inferior to his ability to make decisions at the moment. Which is the bigger, the emperor or the general? Of course it's the emperor. How can the credit for rescuing the general be compared to the credit for rescuing the driver? Cao Cao realized that the opportunity for the rise of the Cao family had arrived. Ziyu's great kindness, Meng Deming keeps it in mind. When I solve the palace chaos, come and thank you again. Cao Cao solemnly arched his hand and saluted. Su Ran smiled and said, Mengde, remember to head straight to the palace, do not entangle, and fight quickly. Cao Cao nodded, somewhat puzzled, and hesitated. Su Ran could only explain, at this moment, I'm afraid there might be someone else who is also thinking about this matter. Cao Cao was slightly stunned and immediately blurted out, are you saying Yuan Shao, Yuan Benchu? Su Ran nodded without hesitation. Turning to see Cao Hong, who was still stunned, Cao Cao immediately cursed, Ziyuan, why are you still standing there? Hurry up to the military camp. Cao Hong reacted and strode out. Ziyu, I would like to invite you to go to the palace together to quell the chaos, Cao Cao suddenly spoke. Going to quell the chaos? Su Ran instinctively wanted to refuse, with no eyes for knives and guns. What if he gets hurt? Ziyu, don't misunderstand. It's not Mengde who can trust you. You and I went to the palace together to save our lives. Firstly, we can share the merits of our protection and use this to secure a position of official and semi-official. Well, to be honest with Ziyu, Yuan Shao has a staff member named Su Yu, who is full of intelligence and strategies. I'm worried. He's not a match for Yuan Shao. Ziyu, are you willing to help me? Cao Cao's gaze was earnest, and it was evident that all he said were heartfelt words. At the same time, in Luoyang City, Yuan Fu Hall. The Yuan brothers and several confidants are praising each other. Above the main seat sat two people. Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu. Yuan Shao was the eldest son, older than Yuan Shu, but he was born from a concubine. Yuan Shu was the second son, but he was the legitimate son, born into the legitimate family. The two of them looked down on each other and had been secretly arguing. So the main seat of Yuan Mansion was equipped with 2 chairs, which is also a major feature. At this moment, Yuan Shao also received a secret report from the palace and was overjoyed. He Jin is already dead, Benchu and the highway can rest assured. The speaker is a middle-aged Confucian scholar in his 30s. This person is wearing a coarse linen robe, with a sparse beard, a narrow nose, and big lips, but his eyes are round and bright, showing a shrewd look. He is Yuan Shao's trusted advisor. Su Yu, Su Ziyuan. Su Yu's words successfully caught everyone's attention. Rest assured, no one in Luoyang City can see through Yu's strategy. Even if we look at the world, only Wulong and Fengchu can penetrate. Su Yu stroked his sparse beard, his pride overflowing in his words. Yuan Shao stood up and said in a loud voice, once the eunuchs and thieves in the palace are quelled, Mr. Ziyuan, I will take the lead. Yuan Shao's tone seemed to have identified him as the main person in charge here. Yuan Shu only hated his clumsiness and was taken first by Yuan Shao. Everyone agreed and praised Su Yu greatly. Su Yu became increasingly confident and continued, saying, He Jin is already dead. In the Yuan family, there was Yuan Wei, the Grand Tutor of Literature, ranked as the 3rd Duke, with the rank of Prime Minister in martial arts, and the head of the 8th Colonel, may I ask, in the Han Dynasty, who could resist the Yuan family. Today, I will quell the rebellion of the eunuchs and make outstanding contributions. I am honored to be the Grand General. Su Yu stood up and bowed to Yuan Shao. Su Yu spoke eloquently and in just a few words, he painted a brilliant vision for the Yuan family. He Jin has died, and among the 8 Colonel of Huyuan, Yuan Shao has the greatest influence. He has a force of 10,000 people under his command, twice that of Cao Cao. Among the remaining 6 colonels, Chun Yuqiong, Feng Fang, and others have always leaned towards Yuan Shao. So although what Su Yu said is somewhat exaggerated, there is also a high possibility. In the past, there was Zhang Zifang who flourished the Han Dynasty for 400 years, and now there is Su Ziyuan who protected the Han Dynasty for 400 years. Yuan Shao pretended to be affectionate and exclaimed. Zhang Liang was a founding hero of the Han Dynasty, known alongside Han Xian and Shao He as the 3 heroes of the early Han Dynasty. Even the founding emperor of the Han Dynasty, Liu Bang, claimed that in the planning and strategy of the curtain, the decisive victory lies thousands of miles away, and I am not as good as the imperial family. It can be said that Marquis Zhang Liang was the spiritual idol of all literati in the Great Han Dynasty. Yuan Shao compared Zhou Yu to Zhang Liang, which also gave each other face. In terms of winning people's hearts, Yuan Shao is very skilled, which is also why many people are willing to follow him. Yuan Shao and Zhou Yu were immersed in commercial hype, but Yuan Shu gave up. It's too early to talk about the position of the general before the eunuch bandits are quelled, isn't it? Implicitly, Yuan Shu, haven't agreed yet. Yuan Shao was born out of wedlock, and everyone in this world knows it, but only the core members of the Yuan family know. What kind of wedlock? It's clearly from the maid in the mansion. To put it simply, Yuan Shao is the result of his father Yuan Feng's chaos after drinking. So, Yuan Shu has always looked down on Yuan Shao. But he also had to admit that Yuan Shao was intelligent and eager to learn from a young age, and was very good at pleasing the elders of his clan. As he grew up, he was always overshadowed by his legitimate son, whether in his social life or in his official career. At present, several people led by Zhou Yu seem to have regarded Yuan Shao as the next head of the Yuan family. How can we tolerate this? Yuan Shao and Zhou Yu exchanged a glance, and they immediately understood. Yuan Shao smiled and said, "Ziyuan was just a joke, don't take the road seriously. If we can quell the rebellion of eunuchs, I will report to the court and ask the highway to serve as the general. As for me, just be a cavalry general." Upon hearing him say this, Yuan Shu's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. "Don't discuss this now. At the beginning, we will immediately gather our troops, break into the palace, and kill the eunuchs." Yuan Shu suppressed his joy and said solemnly. All of this was seen by Zhou Yu. Yuan Shu is really a rascal. Compared to Yuan Shao, you are not even a bit inferior. The Yuan family is really in your hands, and it can be considered finished. Chapter 5, Victory of Emperor Gaozu and Zhang Liang. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Chapter 5, Victory of Emperor Gaozu and Zhang Liang. Chapter 5, Victory of Emperor Gaozu and Zhang Liang. Outside the Yuan mansion, the troops and horses have already assembled. Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu have also changed their armor and are preparing to kill towards the palace. Wait a moment. Zhou Yu suddenly thought of something and quickly stopped the Yuan brothers. Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu looked at Zhou Yu together. Zhou Yu lowered his voice and said, "In the palace, the troops are scarce, so there is no need to worry. Even if the 10 regular attendants kidnapped the palace guards and eunuchs, it was only 1,000 or so people. At the beginning, there were more than 10,000 troops on the road. As long as we arrive at the palace, we can immediately control the situation. Killing the traitors in the palace is just a simple matter. But don't forget, the younger brother of Empress Dowager He Jin and He Miao, also known as the cavalry general He Miao, is still outside the palace. To quell the eunuchs' rebellion, Empress Dowager He may help He Miao rise to power. After all, he is a family. And if Empress Dowager He knows the cause of He Jin's death in the future, she may." Speaking of this, Zhou Yu remained silent, but both Yuan and Er Yuan understood his meaning. Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu frowned at the same time. How could they forget He Miao? Now, with an arrow on the string, what should we do? Why did Miao make a wedding dress after putting in a lot of effort to plan a scene? Yuan Shao caught a glimpse of Zhou Yu's mischievous demeanor, knowing that he had an idea in mind. "Ziyuan, it's already this time, so don't play tricks," Yuan Shao urged. Zhou Yu lowered his voice and said, "Kill He Miao first to prevent future troubles." Yuan Shao was shocked and instinctively said, "How could?" Zhou Yu pressed his hand, indicating that he was not in a hurry. He stroked his sparse beard and continued, "At first, I wanted to say, how can we kill the Imperial Cavalry General for no reason? Aren't we afraid of being questioned by the court?" Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu nodded at the same time. He now colluded with the 10 constant attendants, plotting to harm his elder brother and plotting the position of Grand General. What is the crime of us avenging the general? Not only innocent, but also meritorious. Zhou Yu sneered at the corners of his mouth, as if what he said was true. Yuan Shao pondered silently, this is a real murder of the minister. He should be punished according to his crime. Yuan Shaoza laughed heartily and said, Sir, it's better to consider everything carefully. I, Yuan Shao. My family has a master, and I have Zhang Liang over my ancestors. Speaking of which, in order to take care of Yuan Shu's feelings, Yuan Shao changed his name to the Yuan family, and in fact, Zhou Yu was his personal staff. After this matter, I will ask Mr. Zhu Shao to approve his writing and assist him in his evaluation last month. Yuan Shao generously promised. Zhou Yu was overjoyed and quickly bowed his hand to thank him. Thank you, Brother Benchu. The monthly review by Brothers Zhu Shao is world-renowned. All readers take pride in being able to make it to last month's review. It can be said that once you make it to the list, you will become famous all over the world. In this era, literati value reputation the most, and reputation is sometimes even better than money. Even Zhuge Liang harassed Liu Bei 3 times before leaving the mountain, with the aim of boosting his reputation. Why did Zhou Yu choose Yuan Shao instead of Cao Cao? You should know that Cao, Yuan, and Su have known each other since childhood and are all good friends. It is because the Yuan family has 4 generations and 3 nobles, and their reputation is much better than that of the Cao family, who came from official backgrounds. In fact, Zhou Yu has visited Zhu Shao multiple times, but they have all been turned off. So hearing that Yuan Shao promised to help him make it to the list is more joyful than giving him 10,000 taels of gold. At the same time, in the palace, the Deyang Hall, which used to be solemn and dignified, is now as chaotic as a market. After He Jin was killed, the 10 constant attendants and others were in great panic. Fearing that Empress He would seek revenge, eunuch Zhang Rang took the lead and held Empress He and the young emperor hostage. The 3 officials and many ministers who stayed in the palace to assist in reviewing the memorial were also arrested. There was a dispute among the 10 attendants over how to deal with Empress He and her son. Zhang Rang, the leader, advocated never giving up and never giving up. He killed Empress He and her son, permanently eliminating future troubles, and appointed Liu Xie, the prince of Chenlu, as the new emperor. If Liu Xie was the emperor, then Zhang Rang would be Zhao Gao of Han. Zhao Zhong, the second character of the 10 attendants, disagrees. After all, they are eunuchs without eggs. How dare they bear the name of killing the emperor? Murdering He Jin was just for self-protection. But the nature of murdering the emperor is different. Decades of slave life have made them lack the courage. The 10 eunuchs are eunuchs who have not read much and have little knowledge. In the main hall, several people were arguing fiercely. Empress He, Liu Bian, Liu Xie, and a group of ministers were imprisoned on the side, with a group of eunuchs holding swords staring at them intently. They could hear Zhang Rang and others clearly. Chen Lu Wang and Liu Xie felt a surge of excitement in their hearts. Zhang Rang actually intended to help him ascend. This means that not only does he not have to die, but he will also ascend to the throne of 95. Liu Xie stared at Zhang Rang with wide eyes, and when he looked at him, he secretly nodded at him. At this time, Liu Xie was only 14 years old. After all, he was just a child and couldn't completely conceal his emotions. After seeing Zhang Rang also nod to him, Liu Xie's whole body trembled with excitement. At this moment, his heart was filled with various emotions such as fear, excitement, and unease. All of this was seen by Empress He, with a hint of coldness in her eyes. Humph, at such a young age, I have such ambition. This son cannot stay. In an instant, Empress He had already made a decision. After today, immediately demote Liu Xie from the capital. Empress He's majestic gaze swept over the courtiers, her eyes filled with anger. What a group of loyal and proud ministers. On weekdays, one by one is full of loyalty and righteousness, and one by one claims to be resolute and willing to bend. But now, one by one, they wished they could tuck their heads into their shells. The ministers and Empress He's gaze met, and they all lowered their heads in shame. It's not that they refuse to take the lead, it's just that scholars meet soldiers, and it's hard to explain why. A few adults just cursed at the 10 attendants and were killed directly, with their bodies still hanging on the side. Who dares to continue to be filled with righteous indignation even after learning from previous experiences? These eunuchs without eggs dare not even trap and kill anyone, let alone these bad old men. A few people habitually look at Sangong. The three officials of that dynasty were Situ Wang Yun, Grand Tutor Yuan Wei, and Grand Commandant Yang Biao. But at this moment, the three of them coincidentally chose to pretend to be dead. The most outrageous one belongs to Situ Wang Yun. At this moment, old Wang Yun seemed to have suddenly aged by several decades, with an aging appearance that seemed ready to settle down at any moment. He stood there trembling, half squinting his eyes, pretending to be asleep. Chapter 6, Counting All the Things in the World, Only I, Su Ziyuan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6, Counting All the Things in the World, Only I, Su Ziyuan. Among the three officials, Wang Yun, the Minister of Works, has the oldest qualifications and the highest reputation. Wang Yun boasted. Born as a Han minister, died as a Han ghost. On weekdays, when discussing court affairs, whenever there is a dispute between ministers, Empress He often relies on the opinions of Wang Situ. But now, this Han minister and Han ghost are pretending to sleep. Empress He was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. Yuan Wei, the senior Fu, and Yang Biao, the senior lieutenant, both blushed blush. Wang Yun, you. At this point, the 10 attendants stopped arguing, and in the end, Zhang Rang convinced them. Looking at these usually pretentious nobles and ministers, one by one looked like turtles and grandsons, and the 10 constant attendants couldn't help but sneer. It turns out that men have the same courage. At this moment, outside the palace, Cao Cao's 5,000 troops have arrived at the main entrance of the palace. On the other hand, the Yuan brothers led troops and surrounded the residence of General He Miao, the cavalry general. Cao Cao took the lead and led the charge. After the outbreak of internal strife in the palace today, Zhang Rang immediately replaced the palace gate guards with his own personnel. But these eunuchs were opponents of the regular army, and in less than a cup of tea, the palace gate was breached. Cao Cao led his army commander to drive straight into the Deyang Hall. From the mouth of the palace gate guard just now, he had learned that Empress He and all the ministers were imprisoned in the Deyang Hall. Deyang Hall. Zhang Rangyi measured and said, Our family, we respectfully invite the Empress Dowager and your Majesty to embark. After speaking, he gave a glance to the two eunuchs holding knives, gesturing for them to take action. Two eunuchs swallowed hard and walked towards Empress He and Emperor Liu Bian with knives. Emperor Liu Bian was so frightened that he burst into tears. Zhang Rang, dare you kill the emperor? Empress He was both shocked and angry, and held her son Liu Bian tightly in her arms. Zhang Rang sneered, as a rootless person in our family, there's nothing we dare not do. Before he could finish speaking, the door of Deyang Hall was kicked open by someone. Bang! With a loud bang, the solid wooden door was kicked out and crashed straight into the hall. Cao Cao, dressed in armor and holding a bronze sword, strode in. Su Ran, dressed in a Confucian robe, followed closely behind. Then came the brothers Cao Hong, Cao Ren, and Cao Chun, followed by countless armored soldiers. Zhang's face instantly turned pale. Bang! The knife in hand fell to the ground. The other 10 constant attendants were so frightened that they couldn't even stand, and Zhao Zhong urinated on the spot. Empress He's eyes lit up with both surprise and joy. Captain Cao, quickly take down the rebels. Empress He almost cried out. The ministers who were just pretending to be dead in the group were instantly resurrected. Old Wang Yun's half-squinted eyes suddenly opened, and his hunched body surprisingly straightened a bit. Mengde, please protect me quickly. Wang Situ remained calm in the face of danger and shouted in a low voice. Yuan Wei and Yang Biao looked at him together and said, "Damn it, can you still force your face?" Wang Yun ignored their gaze and glared angrily at Zhang Rang and others, wishing he could eat their meat and blood. My King Situ is full of pride and vows not to be at odds with the eunuch thief. Seeing that Empress He and the Emperor were safe and sound, Cao Cao breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally not too late. He looked excitedly at Su Ran. Today, Cao Mengde entered the palace to rescue him, and he achieved great success. It's just around the corner. Su Ran gave him a slight smile, gesturing to take care of the matter at hand first. Take it down. With a cold shout from Cao Cao, the soldiers rushed forward and captured all the 10 constant attendants and a group of rebels. Zhang Rang knelt on the ground, crying and pleading, "Captain Cao, please recite in front of Marquis Fei Ting in Spare My Life." Cao Teng, the grandfather of Cao Cao, was appointed as the Marquis of Fighting. In terms of seniority, he can be considered the ancestor of eunuchs such as Zhang Rang. Get out of here. Cao Cao kicked him to the ground. Do you dare to mention Marquis Fei Ting? This is simply insulting Cao Teng. Although Cao Teng was a eunuch, he was only capable and recommended many practical talents to the court, with excellent reputation. How dare Zhang compare something like a dog to Marquis Fei Ting? General of Cavalry He Miao's mansion. Half an hour ago, the Yuan Shao brothers swiftly executed the entire He Miao family. The movement of He Mansion has attracted a lot of people to watch. The people were pointing and discussing. Yuan Shao suddenly regretted seeing the situation escalate. The fourth generation and 3 nobles of the Yuan family have a great reputation, but they have committed such brutal acts. If the matter is leaked, it will not only ruin the reputation of the Yuan family, but also not attract criticism from the people of the world. Su Yu saw Yuan Shao's concerns and comforted him by saying, "Don't worry at first. After today, the Yuan family will be in power, and this period of history will be rewritten." Yuan Shao nodded without hesitation. Killing He Miao's entire family was not his original intention, but now it can only be done this way. Under Su Yu's arrangement, a news quickly spread among the people. He Miao colluded with eunuchs and plotted to kill his elder brother. The Yuan brothers avenged the general and executed the rebels. He Miao, damn it. The public opinion quickly fermented, and the people were unaware of it. Under the intentional instigation and leadership of those with intentions, they began to support the Yuan family one after another. Seeing the public opinion guiding the Yuan family, Yuan Shao was overjoyed and his previous worries were dispelled. The Yuan brothers were overjoyed and led their subordinates to rush towards the palace in high spirits. Along the way, I didn't forget to send people everywhere to preach. He Miao colluded with eunuchs and plotted against the Grand General. Now he is also plotting against the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. The Yuan family was ordered to enter the palace to rescue him. Su Yu bribed some people and led a commotion among the people. Under their instigation, everyone in Luoyang city knew that the eunuchs rebelled, killed the general, and even plotted against the emperor. The simple people were filled with righteous indignation and took the initiative to follow the Yuan family, shouting and rushing towards the imperial palace. Yuan Shao was overjoyed, he didn't expect to have any unexpected gains. The gaze towards Su Yu was full of praise. Su Yu rode on the horse, stroking his sparse beard, his face revealing a color. All things in the world, only I, Su Ziyuan. Just arrived at the palace gate, Yuan Shao and others were all dumbfounded. The palace gate has been taken over by Cao Cao's people. The person stationed at the city gate, Yuan Shao knows, Cao Ren, Cao Zixiao. Chapter 7, Give the Grand Tutor a sword and go to devote yourself to the great Han Dynasty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7, give the Grand Tutor a sword and go be loyal to the Great Han. We are subordinates of Colonel Cao Cao of the Jian army, ordered to enter the palace to rescue us. Who is outside the palace? Quickly retreat. Above the palace gate, Cao Ren was dressed in armor and exuded a majestic aura. In fact, he had already recognized Yuan Shao and sent someone to the palace to notify Cao Cao as soon as possible. Above the city gate, there were crowds of people, rows and columns of soldiers, fully armed and ready to go. The following people saw the situation and immediately began to discuss it. Look, it's the soldiers and horses of Colonel Cao Cao of the Imperial Army. It seems that Captain Cao has come to rescue us first. When it comes to loyalty and bravery, one must still belong to Cao Cao. There are even more good things to compare directly with Cao Cao and Yuan Shao. Both of them are Huyuan colonel, but in my opinion, Cao Cao is better than Yuan Shao. What do you mean by that? Even discerning people can tell. Cao Cao's achievement in saving the country will make the Cao family prosperous. I heard my mother say that my family has relatives with the Cao family, so I need to go back and flip through the genealogy quickly. People, every word you say and every word I say is about how Cao Cao is, how he is. Yuan Shao was riding on a horse, his eyes red and in a fit of anger, his body was trembling. Yuan Shu's face was grim and he remained silent, but his hand gripping the reins was already bulging with veins. Zhou Yu's eyes widened wide, his hand stroking his beard stiff in mid-air, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. This Nima. Yuan Shao raised his whip and pointed towards Cao Ren on the city gate tower, his lips trembling. We bear the blame, but you're the one who deserves the credit. Yuan Shao wanted to curse his mother, but he couldn't. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to speak. Unfortunately, everyone is still under the banner of saving the driver and cannot tear their faces apart. Moreover, there are so many onlookers outside the palace gate. After all, there are many people with mixed opinions belonging to the savior faction. This superficial politeness still needs to be put on a show. Zhou Yu quietly dismounted, pulled over a commoner, and asked some questions in a low voice, suddenly feeling a little embarrassed. Through inquiry, it was learned that Cao Cao's people arrived about half an hour ago and had just entered the palace. Counting the time, it happened to be the time when they slaughtered He Fu. That is to say, if He Miao is not killed first, Yuan Shao will be ahead of Cao Cao. At the thought of this, Zhou Yu suddenly felt a little overwhelmed and quietly wiped away his cold sweat, trying to calm down. Nima, how could Cao Amon know that the 10 constant attendants are causing trouble today? After much thought, the only explanation is that Cao Cao accidentally met him. Hey, Cao Amon is really lucky. Zhou Yu let out a long sigh. At this moment, Yuan Shao was furious, but unfortunately, in front of so many people, he couldn't react and felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten something. At the same time, in the palace, Cao Cao held a bronze sword and stood proudly on the side. Zhang Rang and 10 other attendants knelt on the ground, crying bitterly and begging for mercy. And Wang Yun, Yuan Wei, and other veteran officials completely awakened. Loyal officials and tough men were attacking the 10 constant attendants with words and writing, and even the spitting stars could drown people. Kill the eunuchs and protect your majesty. Kill the eunuchs and protect your majesty. Kill the eunuchs and protect your majesty. Emperor Liu Bian huddled in the arms of Empress He, trembling and afraid to open his eyes. On the contrary, Prince Chen Lu Xie remained much calmer, even though he was afraid to death in his heart. Seeing the arrival of Cao Cao, Empress He felt relieved and breathed a long sigh of relief. Empress He glared angrily at Zhang Rang, her heart filled with regret. I regret not listening to my elder brother's words and not killing Zhang Rang and others in a timely manner, which led to today's disaster and caused my elder brother to lose his head. General He Jin has died, and great power hangs in the air. Empress He knows that at this moment, the most important thing is to stabilize the situation. Although Cao Cao had the merit of escorting, he was still an outsider and by no means the first choice. So, taking advantage of the chaos just now, Empress He secretly sent someone to inform her younger brother He Miao and rushed into the palace to rescue him. But for now, before He Miao arrives, we must first stabilize Cao Cao. Although Empress He is a woman, her political strategy is not inferior to that of a man. At this moment, Cao Cao saw that the situation in the main hall was under control, so he untied his sword from his waist and strode forward. I hope the Empress Dowager and your Majesty will forgive me for the delay in rescuing you. Cao Cao knelt respectfully to the ground. Empress He quickly comforted and said, Cao Aiqing is loyal and courageous, thanks to you today. As she spoke, she gently pushed her son in her arms, gesturing for him to come forward and help Cao Cao up. After all, Liu Bian is the emperor of the Great Han Dynasty. At this moment, it is a great opportunity to showcase the emperor's respect for the wise and the virtuous, and to win people's hearts. But Liu Bian was already scared and confused. Although he was pushed to stand up, he just stared at Cao Cao with a bewildered expression. Cao Cao was still kneeling on the ground, feeling extremely embarrassed. At this moment, a slightly immature figure quickly stepped forward and held on to Cao Cao's arm with both hands. General Cao, please get up quickly. General Cao, being loyal to the king in serving the country, what a crime. But Chen Luan Lu Shiqiang remained calm and stepped forward to help Cao Cao. Su Ran looked at Lu Xia, and even though he was just a junior high school student, he pretended to be old-fashioned and suddenly felt amused. Cao Cao stood up and glanced at Lu Xia, then at the frightened Liu Bian, with a slight sigh in his heart. The ministers also saw it and silently sighed. King Chenlu is known for his virtuous reputation, but unfortunately, Emperor Ling did not pass the throne to him. I, Lu Jiaming, will keep in mind General Chao's contribution to saving the country. I will definitely report to your Majesty and pay tribute to General Chao. Lu Xia held on to Cao Cao's hand and calmly sold him a favor while speaking. How could Cao Cao not hear the flattering intent in his words, but in front of Empress Dowager He and the Emperor, he didn't say much and could only respectfully state that it was his duty to be a vassal. After speaking, Lu Xia asked the names of Cao Ren and other generals one by one, and said that the court would definitely give them great praise. Everything that should have been done and said by the Emperor was told by him. Empress He can only be angry, who can make her son Liu Bian lose his temper. Oh, who is this gentleman? Lu Xia noticed that Su Ran had been watching him. Su Ran, dressed in a Confucian robe, looked out of place with Cao Cao and others in armor. Lu Xia asked, but Su Ran did not intend to kneel down and only casually reported his name. Lu Xia was somewhat surprised, with a slight frown on his brow, but he didn't say much. But all the ministers stopped working. Kid, you're so brave. How dare Chen Luwang not kneel? The person who spoke was Yuan Wei, who was the Grand Tutor and placed the greatest emphasis on etiquette. Upon seeing the situation, Cao Cao was eager to explain for Su Ran, but before he could speak, he was stopped by Su Ran. Su Ran looked coldly at Yuan Wei and sneered. Is this the Grand Tutor of the dynasty? Just now, the 10 attendants were causing trouble. Why didn't Yuan Taifu come forward and accuse them? You. Yuan Wei's old face turned red and he choked and couldn't speak. Today's events will become a shame for him throughout his life. Since Grand Tutor Yuan is so loyal, brave, and upright, and the rebellion is not yet quelled, give Grand Tutor a sword and go be loyal to the Great Han. Bang! I don't know which young man threw a sword out of place. It happened to fall in front of Yuan Wei. Chapter 8, Killing and Killing the Heart, Killing Cao Cao. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8, Killing and Killing the Heart, Killing Cao Cao who threw the sword. Unconsciously, Cao Cao thought it was Cao Hong and turned around to glare at him fiercely. Nima, why are you so sincere? Cao Hong hurriedly waved his hand, it's not me. I may be a bit stupid, but I'm not stupid. For a moment, there was a complete silence in the Deyang hall. Although Cao Cao pretended to be unhappy on his face, his heart was actually filled with joy. He has long been displeased with these stubborn and old-fashioned people. One by one, they only know how to fight in the dark. If something really happens, they will run faster than rabbits. If you can't run, just curl up and be a turtle. The matter has been settled, and I want to jump out and compete for credit. Yuan-Wei was somewhat embarrassed by Su Ran's run on him. Actually, he's not really targeting Su Ran, he's just showing off habitually. Just to brush off a sense of presence unexpectedly, but kicked the iron plate. When it comes to hating others, Su Ran never fears anyone. In my previous life, I was hating the sky, the earth, and the air, and I would just spray anyone who didn't like me. People like Yuan-Wei, if placed in later generations, are the kind of old and wilted people who ask people to give up their seats when taking the bus, and dance square dances to be lively and lively. Simply put, one will only rely on the old to sell off, bully the weak and fear the hard. The most effective way to deal with hooligans is to be even more rogue than hooligans. Yuan-Wei reacted from his daze, his beard trembling with anger. He is the Grand Tutor of the current dynasty, ranking among the three princes, and can be said to hold a high position of power. On weekdays, even Empress Dowager He would give him a thin face. How could anyone dare to talk to him like that? Today, in front of my colleagues, I was ridiculed by a younger generation. Vertical. You. Yuan-Wei is over 60 years old and claims to be full of poetry and books, but when he encounters someone like Su Ran who pouts on his face, he doesn't respond. After a while, you didn't know how to refute. After all, what Su Ran said is true. Su Ran is not afraid of wearing shoes barefoot, and he does not want to enter the court as an official. He is not afraid of Yuan-Wei at all. Chao Mengda, is that how you discipline your subordinates? Yuan-Wei turned his head and sprayed his anger at Cao Cao. Since I said I can't cure you, let your boss take care of you. Cao Cao quickly bowed and saluted, but he dared not behave like Su Ran. First, he bowed his hand, and then Cao Cao apologized slightly. Grand Tutor is wrong, Ziyuan is not my subordinate. After speaking, he added. Today, being able to exercise and enter the palace in a timely manner to save the driver is all thanks to Ziyuan's efforts. This is implying that Yuan-Wei and Su Ran have contributed to the protection. Yuan-Wei frowned slightly, he didn't believe Cao Cao's words. In his opinion, Cao Cao must have said this intentionally to protect Su Ran. Not your subordinate. Just now, Su came in right after you, Cao Mengda. Cao Cao caught a glimpse of Su Ran's lips twitching slightly, afraid that he would provoke Yuan-Wei again, so he quickly stepped forward to smooth the situation. Cough cough, Grand Tutor. Now that the thieves in the palace are causing chaos, we still need to rely on the prestige of the old Grand Tutor. Why don't we first quell the rebellion? Let's discuss other matters later. This is looking for a step down for Yuan-Wei. Situ Wang Yun and Tai Wei Yang Biao also rushed forward to falsely persuade. Even Chen Lu Wang and Lu Xie spoke up. Yuan-Wei saw the situation and immediately descended the donkey slope, indicating that the overall situation was important. Lu Xie smiled slightly at Su Ran, as he had just pleaded for Su Ran's mercy. He could see that Cao Cao relied heavily on Su Ran. To befriend Su Ran is equivalent to befriending Cao Cao. Su Ran smiled and nodded as a gesture. This last emperor of the great Han dynasty doesn't seem as unbearable as the Three Kingdoms romance claims. In Su Ran's eyes, Chen Luwang Lu Xie had no royal aura and was just a junior high school student. But in Lu Xie's view, Su Ran is not ordinary. Seeing a prince with composure, neither humble nor overbearing, this determination is unparalleled. Taisher Gong once said, "Those with thunderous chests and a face like a flat lake can worship the general." Lu Xie secretly kept an eye out and wanted to pay more attention to this young hero in the future. Cao Cao secretly pouted, Su Ziyu is really tough. Seeing the prince not bowing, he angrily criticized the Grand Tutor. Comparing the two sides, the attitude towards me, old Cao, is simply amiable. In an instant, Cao Cao was inexplicably moved at this time. Cao Cao was still very respectful and loyal to the Han royal family. Outside the palace. Who is outside the palace? Quickly retreat. Cao Ren shouted again above the palace gate. Yuan Shao couldn't bear it anymore and angrily cursed, Cao Zixiao, are you blind when you step on a horse? Two people, one on the city and the other below. Yuan Shao could see the mole on Cao Ren's face clearly, but he didn't believe that Cao Ren didn't recognize him. This guy is clearly pretending to be confused while trying to understand. Cao Ren just chuckled and said. Oh, it turns out to be a lieutenant in the Central Army. Yuan Shao said with a stern expression. Cao Zixiao, stop talking nonsense. Open the palace gate quickly. Cao Renin turned his head and lowered his voice, saying. Why hasn't the person who went to report the news come back yet? A subordinate hurriedly said. Perhaps the roads in the palace were not familiar, which delayed the time. Don't be impatient, Brother Benchu. Cao Ren ignored Yuan Shao and turned around directly. Send someone to report again. Yes. Another subordinate was ordered and hurriedly left. Zhou Yu saw Cao Ren whispering softly to his subordinates, and suddenly felt something was wrong. Judging from the situation, Cao Mengde has not yet fully stabilized the situation in the palace. We can't procrastinate any longer, otherwise the credit will belong to Cao Cao alone. Most importantly, Zhou Yu felt a bit guilty. The reason why the Yuan brothers delayed was all because of his bad idea. To first execute He Miao. If today's matter is messed up, Yuan Shao cannot spare him. Upon thinking about this, Zhou Yu quickly advised. Brother Benchu, we can't wait any longer. Order a strong attack. If Cao Mengde gets the top job, then the position of the general will be none other than him. For today's plan, there is only one no stop, directly annihilating Cao Mengde. Accuse him of leading troops to rebel. Yuan Shao's face showed a difficult expression, hesitating and indecisive. After all, Cao Cao was his brother who grew up playing since childhood. When they were young, they even snatched the bride together, and their friendship was very good. And the other party also has 5,000 soldiers and horses under their hands, so they will definitely not surrender. The most important thing is that Cao Cao also fought under the banner of saving others, openly slaughtering his comrades. Yuan Shao dare not bear this charge. The golden signboard of the 4th generation and 3rd Duke of the Yuan family cannot be smashed into his hands. And there are so many people watching here. Although Yuan Shao was confident in killing Cao Cao and silencing others, how could he stop the lingering rumors? In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through Yuan Shao's mind, but he hesitated to make a decision. Yuan Shu was originally pleased to see Yuan Shao feeling exhausted, but at this moment, he became anxious when he heard Zhou Yu mention the position of the Grand General. At this moment, are you still hesitant? No matter how late it is, our brothers will have to waste so much money to deceive that kid. At this moment, Yuan Shu was really anxious. He couldn't stand Yuan Shao's scheming and indecisive nature since he was young. Zhou Yu saw Yuan Shao still pondering and knew what he was worried about, so he said again. As long as we seize the imperial palace as soon as possible and gather 50,000 soldiers and horses from Luoyang City, the overall situation can be determined. At that time, treating Cao Cao as a crime of rebellion, who dares to question it? This is a public matter of the world, not a private matter between the original and Mengde. It cannot be abolished for personal reasons. Yuan Shao's face turned pale with iron, his hand resting on the hilt of the sword. Highway. Zhou Yu turned his head to look at Yuan Shu and gave him a glance. Yuan Shu raised the corner of his mouth slightly and suddenly raised his sword in his hand. Yuan Shao caught a glimpse of Yuan Shu and remained silent. Zhou Yu was very certain in his heart that Yuan Shao had tacitly agreed. Chapter 9. Butcher's Misconduct, Great Han Should Die. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Chapter 9. Butcher's Misconduct, Great Han Should Die Within the Palace. Empress Dowager He had already regained her senses, and in anger, she walked straight towards Zhang Rang and gave him a hard slap in the face. Zhang Rang, this palace has already saved your dog's life. But you have turned the tide and killed the general. I truly regret not letting the general kill you. Zhang Rang's liver and gallbladder were torn apart, and he cried out. The Empress Dowager spared her life. The old servant was also momentarily confused. The old servant heard that the general had issued an edict to several border governors, asking them to lead troops into the capital. They said they were going to force the Empress Dowager to order us to be killed under the pretext of clearing the emperor's side and punishing eunuchs. We had no choice but to take action first. The old slaves have always been loyal to the Empress Dowager, as you know. Back then, Yuan Shao, the old thief, assassinated the Empress Dowager. It was the old slaves who fought to the death to protect her. If it weren't for the old slaves, the Empress Dowager would have been plotting against you long ago. Pop. Another loud slap interrupted Zhang Rang's crying. Empress Dowager He is furious. It's been a while now, you lackey still thinking of surviving. Cao Cao was taken aback and used the pretext of clearing the emperor's side and punishing eunuchs to lure foreign troops into the capital. This was the idea given by Yuan Shao to He Jin. At first, he hated He Jin because he raised objections. In Cao Cao's view, there was too much noise from attracting foreign troops, how could it not be leaked? And if things leak out, how can we succeed? How could Zhang Rang and others have learned about this in advance? Hush. Cao Cao took a deep breath. He suddenly realized that Yuan Shao might have known for a long time that things wouldn't succeed, even to say, Yuan Shao's goal is to prevent things from succeeding. The idea was proposed by Yuan Shao, with the intention of executing the 10 attendants, but the death was indeed due to He Jin. Can you say? It's Yuan Shao borrowing a knife to kill. Cao Cao only felt a chill in his back. It seems that he needs to re-examine this former playmate. At this moment, Su Ran was even more shocked than Cao Cao. However, what shocked him was not that Yuan Shao borrowed a knife to kill. He knew about this long ago. He was surprised to see what Zhang Rang had just mentioned. The border governor. Shiliang Dongzhuo. A name flashed through Su Ran's mind. Mengda, did He Jinka once issue an edict to the governor of the Western Liang Dynasty, Dongzhuo? Su Ran asked urgently. Upon hearing this, Cao Cao widened his eyes. Only a few confidants of He Jin know such secrets, and how did you know? Ziyu, how do you know? Su Ran didn't have time to explain and urged. Quickly, implement it immediately. Has the decree sent to Shiliang been sent out? Cao Cao felt uneasy when he saw his anxious expression. Since he met Su Ran, he has never been so panicked before. Even in today's court uprising, Su Ran remained calm and composed. It's just an edict, why are you so panicked? Zhang Rang, seeking self-protection, quickly shouted at the top of his throat. The decree was stamped and issued 3 days ago. One was sent to Shiliang, and the other was sent to Bingzhou. It's all 800 miles urgent. So, the old slave was also forced to sigh. How can an idiot enter? Butcher's mistake, the great Han should die. Su Ran couldn't help but sigh. Bold. Wang Yun, Yuan Wei, Yang Biao, and others almost spoke in unison. Empress Dowager He glared angrily at Su Ran. She and He Jinsheng came from a butcher's house and hated being called butchers the most in their lives. Someone, drag it down and chop it off. Empress Dowager He has been humiliated one after another today and is already very angry. At this moment, I couldn't help but hear Su Ran's wild words. The Han dynasty is majestic, how can one trample on it at will? Cao Cao's eyebrows furrowed slightly and his face showed displeasure. The soldiers of the Deyang palace were all his subordinates, and when they saw that the main general was indifferent, they all stood still. But there are also some that are not eye-catching. A soldier volunteered and walked towards Su Ran. Get lost. This person was kicked out by Cao Hong before he even walked up to Su Ran. This kick was extremely powerful, and the soldier was kicked so hard that he vomited blood and fell to the ground unable to rise. Cao Hong scanned the soldiers, and the threat in his eyes was self-evident. In the main hall, no one dares to move. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Empress Dowager He's chest fluctuated violently, and she was so grand that she didn't even have the power to kill an unknown person. Cao Cao is just a military captain, how dare he openly challenge her? The Empress Dowager calmed down. Su Xiaozi was just a momentary slip of the tongue, and he couldn't bear to die. The top priority is to stabilize the situation in the palace and prevent the situation from escalating. The speaker is Situ Wang Yun. At this moment it is not appropriate to have a direct conflict with Cao Cao, as the situation in the palace is not stable. Upon Wang Yun's reminder, Empress Dowager He also came to her senses. But everything has already been said, so let's just leave it at a standstill. Where is the royal authority? At this time, Yang Biao led other ministers to advise one after another. This is laying steps for Empress Dowager He. Empress Dowager He pretended to follow the advice and snorted coldly, no longer caring. Cao Cao was also somewhat puzzled by Su Ran's shocking remarks, but at this moment, there were many people with mixed eyes and not many questions. After all, if Su Ran were to make any shocking remarks again, it would not be easy to end. Su Ran ignored them and was busy calculating in his heart. It has been 3 days since the edict was issued, so it must have been delivered to Xiliang. I'm afraid Dongzhuo is already on his way to Beijing. Roughly estimated, it only takes 3 days at most. Hey, Dongzhuo's era is about to begin. This also means that a bloody storm is about to come. Dongzhuo has been managing Xiliang for many years, with a force of 200,000 soldiers under his command, making him one of the most powerful feudal lords today. Compared to that, the troops and horses in Luoyang city are simply not worth looking at. Moreover, the iron cavalry of Xiliang has extremely strong combat power. Looking at the 50,000 soldiers and horses in Huyuan, those who can truly fight are probably less than 30,000. Dongzhuo's entry into the capital is unstoppable. This matter should be dealt with early in history. Dongzhuo caused trouble in Luoyang and carried out mass killings, but in reality, it ultimately boils down to the issue of profit distribution. Dongzhuo committed numerous crimes such as killing princes and ministers, staying overnight on the dragon bed, and setting fire to the city of Luoyang. But Wang Yun, Yang Biao, Kai Yong and other ministers were all fine. This indicates that Dongzhuo's brutality is targeted, with a focus on those who pose a threat to him. Later, why did Yuan Wyman's family be executed? That's because Yuan Shao joined forces with the 18 feudal lords to suppress Dongzhuo. And today, Lao Chao received the merit of escort, which is a great credit and a powerful competitor to the position of Grand General. In other words, it's Dongzhuo's competitor. At this moment, a young school quickly ran into the main hall. The person approached Cao Cao and whispered, "General, Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu led their troops to surround the palace and demanded to open the palace gate. General Cao Ren can't hold on anymore." Cao Cao was greatly surprised, and the Yuan brothers made it clear that they were here to take credit. Su Ran was very close to Cao Cao, and upon hearing the report, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. He had come to take the gun. "General Cao, the current situation in the palace is basically stable. You can lead your army to withdraw from the palace first." Empress He spoke up. She estimated that He Miao's people were about to arrive at this moment. The first skill of this escort is still to be obtained by our own brothers. If He Jin dies, let He Miao replace him as the Grand General. At most, compensate Cao Cao afterwards. Situ Wang Yun guessed the intentions of Empress He and quickly began to persuade Cao Cao to retreat first. Tai Wei Yang Biao and Tai Fu Yuan Wei exchanged a glance, secretly cursing Wang Yun for being shameless. Isn't this a clear indication of wanting to take credit for Cao Mengda? Chapter 10, Getting Rich, U7, Me 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10, Getting Rich, U7, Me 3, Cough, report to the Empress Dowager that there are still remnants of the eunuch party that have not been eradicated yet. For the safety of the Empress Dowager and Her Majesty, I am willing to wait until the end of the pacification before withdrawing. Cao Cao is not foolish either, of course he won't do it. Exit the palace. Doesn't that mean handing over the credit received? Empress He turned her head to look at Captain Yang Biao and gestured for him to speak. Yang Biao originally did not want to do such a thing of shedding the burden and killing the donkey. But the Empress Dowager has orders, and he dare not disobey them. Yang Biao naturally understood what Empress Dowager he was thinking. So I had to cough dry twice. Captain Chao's loyalty is commendable. It's better to wait for General Biao cavalry to arrive before Mengda goes back to rest. This is already hinting at Cao Cao. Cao Cao pulled his face down, this is a blatant competition for merit. Su Ran snorted coldly and shook his head secretly. Poor thing, what a pity. At this moment, Empress He still doesn't understand. The imperial relatives and eunuchs have been eliminated, and the two forces guarding the imperial power are gone. Great Han, it's over. At this moment, a palace maid hurriedly ran into the main hall. She is the personal maid of Empress He. She quickly walked up to Empress He and whispered a few words in her ear. What? After Empress He exclaimed in surprise, she stumbled and almost fell. He Miao died. Empress He suddenly felt hopeless. Damn 10 constant attendants. Brother, I'm sorry to you all subconsciously. Empress He believed that the death of He Miao was also the result of the 10 constant attendants. Wang Yun and Yang Biao were so close that they naturally heard it. After being shocked, the old man's face turned red. Nima, just now, I said I'll wait for He Miao to come. Isn't this a slap in the face? Su Ran took the opportunity to pull Cao Cao aside and whispered. Mengda, I won't be able to achieve the feat of escorting you today. Immediately replaced the flag of Yuan Shao. Today, I was ordered by Yuan Shao to enter the palace to rescue me. Quickly give credit to Yuan Shao. Cao Cao was greatly shocked. You. I and Yuan Shao are both colonels. Although he has more troops under his command, we don't have to be afraid of him. Su Ran knew that Cao Cao had misunderstood, but at this moment he had no time to explain, so he said. I will explain this later. If Mengda believes me, he will do as I say. Otherwise, there will be fatal consequences. Cao Cao was shocked, his eyebrows furrowed tightly, and he remained silent. Someone, kill all these eunuchs. Empress He roared hysterically. Killing the 10 attendants is a great achievement. Cao Hong rubbed out his knife and strode forward, ready to take action himself. Zhang Rang and others were frightened and burst into tears. Ziyuan. Cao Cao let out a deep drink and stopped Cao Hong. Today, we were ordered by Colonel Yuan Shao of the Central Army to enter the palace to quell the rebellion and provide protection. The rebellion has been decided, and it is necessary to wait for General Yuan to come and take charge of the overall situation. The eunuch should be killed, but General Yuan must also come and personally handle it. How can we handle it ourselves? Cao Cao paused every word, but in fact, his heart was filled with depression. What? Cao Hong looked bewildered and thought he had heard the wrong thing. Empress He, the three princes, and a group of ministers were all shocked. Grand Tutor Yuan-Wei's eyes were even wider than those of a cow. Ah! Is this all my nephew Yuan Shao's idea? At this moment, another soldier came to report. General Yuan's troops have arrived outside the palace, and we can't hold on anymore. The soldier was stunned and shouted out directly. Yuan-Wei suddenly realized. Oh, my nephew has arrived, no wonder Cao Cao suddenly hesitated. So I'm afraid of Yuan Shao. Cao Mengde has always been a follower since he was young. I didn't expect to become a colonel of the imperial army, and his courage is still so small. Help. This is a huge credit, just give it to Benchu like this, Yuan-Wei thought he had understood everything and was extremely proud. If everything was done by Yuan Shao, Yuan-Wei would also feel a light on his face. At this moment, Empress He was filled with grief and anger. Her two brothers were killed on the same day, and she only wanted to kill the 10 constant attendants to vent her anger. Today, who killed the 10 attendants? I apologize for the inconvenience and ensure that he is promoted to the new general. Empress He looked directly at Cao Cao and spoke loudly. Cao Cao's mouth twitched slightly, but he never made a statement. Cao Hong and his brothers and subordinates immediately became anxious. Wang Yun and Yang Biao exchanged a glance of confusion. Follow me to welcome General Yuan. Cao Cao ordered the troops to withdraw directly. Cao Hong was not satisfied and was still debating something. He was kicked by Cao Cao and had to hold back. We have been ordered by General Yuan to come and escort, so please don't speak too much. After speaking, Cao Cao took the lead and walked towards the outside of the palace. Although Cao Hong felt unwilling, he had no choice but to follow him out. Stepping out of the main hall, Su Ran pulled the depressed Cao Cao aside. Mengde, are you interested in discussing a business deal? Cao Cao was also an open-minded person. Although his heart was filled with doubts at the moment, since he chose to trust Su Ran, he forcefully suppressed many doubts. Ziyu, come and listen, Cao Cao forced himself. Su Ran secretly praised that this eternal traitor was indeed extremely courageous. To get rich, you 7 and I 3. You must make Cao Ren think of a way to delay Yuan Shao's burning of incense. Then, under the guise of searching for the remaining sins of eunuchs, we will investigate the palace and seize the opportunity to sweep away all the wealth and treasures inside. Remember, under the banner of Yuan Shao, this account needs to be recorded in his account. It's not easy to come back to the palace, you can't go back empty-handed. In Su Ran's view, Dong Zhuo entered the capital and eventually set fire to the city of Luoyang. When he left, he dug up all the tombs of the former emperor. It's better to take it yourself than to make it cheaper for Mr. Dong, the thief. If you don't take it from heaven, you'll have to bear the blame instead. Cao Cao suddenly widened his eyes, his face full of shock. Ah! Even though he knew Su Ran was bold and fearless, he never expected that he would miss going to the palace. Nima, is there anything else in this world that Su Ziyu dare not do? One more thing, you need to be fast and efficient in your work. Su Ran added. Cao Cao swallowed hard and his heart pounded. Is De Han really going to die? A fatal disaster. Cao Cao gritted his teeth and did it. Although Su Ran knew that Yuan Shao had planned to assassinate He Jin, he did not intend to expose him now. Mastering this matter is equivalent to mastering Yuan Shao. Currently, Yuan Shao is just a lieutenant in the middle army and has not yet grown up. Reporting him now will not benefit old Chao much. It's better to fatten up before killing, and wait until the 18 feudal lords conspire to attack Dong. There's enough for Yuan Mengzhu to drink a pot. To apply Rungi's sentence. Your secret, I will eat it for a lifetime. P.S. Seeking a wave of flowers and evaluation tickets. I don't know if this type of strategist article is popular among old men. Do you like to read it? If you have any good suggestions, you can leave a comment. Thank you here.